No business arising. Okay. Sounds like we're back on. Did everybody hear that? Recording in progress. My apologies to anyone that's getting interrupted access to this. So that the next, I see no, sorry. Okay, so we're going to go back because Jill did not get the mover and the seconder for the consent agenda items. Moved by Tony, seconded by Carl. Please use a show of hands for all who are in favor. Okay, the consent agenda items have been moved. No business arising from the minutes. Correspondence. So the next agenda item is Police Services Board report. It is Advocacy Working Group. It is attached. Jill, do you want to comment on this?
Thank you, Chair Redmond and members of the board. So agenda item 9.1 is in response to some interest that the board had in engaging in more formal advocacy efforts with a particular interest in providing feedback to all levels of government as it relates to some key legislative changes that are expected in the near future. And this includes in particular the new Community Safety and Policing Act. So based on this interest, terms of reference for an advocacy working group have been developed for the board's consideration. Based on the terms of reference that are in your package, the ad hoc working group would have a mandate to act as a committee of the board and to advise and recommend advocacy efforts to the board as it relates to advancing matters of police service delivery and police governance, and to act as a forum for collaboration with the Waterloo Regional Police Service on matters where we see joint advocacy efforts between the board and the service as appropriate. So at this point, we would be recommending that this working group be time limited and would dissolve automatically once the working group submits its final report to the board. If the board would want to pursue this, we would be looking to appoint 3 members on the board to serve on this working group.
Thank you very much, Jill. Is there any discussion? So this is specifically looking for changes in the regulations of the Police Services Act. So it is time limited. Jill brought this back. This is the result of a previous discussion we had about doing a bit of a deeper dive. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Chair Redmond, thank you for the report, Jill. Are we looking to say yes to the ad hoc committee and then those that are interested? How do you want to do that?
Do you want to move that?
I would move that we move forward on this so that we have that because we have advocacy work that the board needs to do through OPSPA and other things, and then there's what the chief is doing, and then sometimes there's overlap. So I think we should do that and approve the formation, and then if we want to do it separately of those who have time, and we can figure that out now or at a point future. So I would move the recommendation that Jill has before us to set up this ad hoc group.
Thanks, Ian. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Rosita. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please indicate a support by raising your hand. Okay, that looks unanimous. We are looking for 3 members. I'm going to suggest that you submit your interest to Jill and we will work it out if the committee is agreeable to that. So the next agenda item 12, is Chief of Police reports. And the first agenda item is search of persons. Chief, do you want to introduce this?
Good morning, Chair Redmond, members of the board, and happy March. Pleased to go through 3 separate Chief of Police reports today, the first being the search of persons. And I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Margaret Glode, our Manager of Strategic Services, Inspector Brenna Bond from our Central Division, who also provides leadership to our Prisoner Care and Control Facility, as well as Miss Amanda Francini from our Strategic Services branch, who, as the board knows, is all things data and tied to our strategic direction. And of course, Staff Superintendent John Goodman, who oversees neighborhood policing, along with Deputy Hilton and Deputy Crowell. There's a bit of an overlap piece as this report, as it relates to prisoner care and control. But just for some context, as the board is aware, this is a follow-up from 2021 in relation to an internal audit, as well as work that our police service joined other police services in reviewing procedures around search of persons, as well as promising practices across the province to ensure that we continue to track data, follow recommendations set out by the independent police review director. And I'm very pleased with the work that's been ongoing. There's still much work to be done on this, particularly around infrastructure and technology as it relates to also the new Central Division building, where we'll see enhancements based on technology and based on new design and new frameworks in our infrastructure. But I'm very pleased and want to recognize the work of Margaret and Brenna and Amanda to bring this to fruition. It has not been a small task. So pleased to welcome everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Inspector Brenna Bond and Amanda to take you through the report. And of course, we're here to answer any questions you may have. Good morning, Brenna.
Good morning, Chief. Thank you. I'm going to provide some background information, and then I'm going to turn it over to Amanda for statistical information. And then I'll finish and take a few questions or clarifying information if required. So as the Chief mentioned, recommendations for improvements in compliance regarding the search of persons were made subsequent to conducting an internal audit and correspondence and recommendations from the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, the OIPRD. Procedural content and practices were endorsed as referenced in a prior board report number 2021-122. The recommendations provided are in place or currently in progress. One of the recommendations was an annual commitment to report search data to the Police Services Board. So just for some background, a search of person must be authorized by law, and the authority for police officers to search a person is found in common law and statute. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms provides that anyone has the right against unreasonable search and seizure, and the onus is on the officer conducting the search and the supervisor to demonstrate that the search is necessary, reasonable, and justified in law. A search must be reasonable and justified given the circumstances present at the time of arrest. As the level of intrusiveness of search increases, so does the justification for the search. Common law authority allows police officers to search an individual incident to arrest for evidence, anything that may assist the individual in escaping custody, or for safety, where the officer is looking for anything that could cause injury to the officer or the individual. Officers may also investigatively detain an individual based on reasonable grounds to suspect that an individual is connected to a particular crime and that the detention is reasonably necessary. As such, officers may search the individual incidental to this investigative detention as provided in R versus Mann. This type of search is the most unobtrusive and is only for officer or public safety. It's limited to a search for weapons only. There are 4 types of searches that may be conducted by a member of the police service. A frisk search is a pat down or touching search of the subject and includes checking the individual's pockets. This search can include a search of the hair, headgear, coat, jacket, belt, shoes, socks for personal possessions the individual may be carrying. It may also extend to a search of the individual's mouth, depending on the situation. The search is methodically conducted and may involve the removal or rearrangement of clothing that does not expose undergarments or areas of the body which are normally covered by undergarments. This type of search also includes the area within the immediate control of the arrested party. An intake search is more comprehensive and is conducted in a more controlled environment. A metal detecting wand is utilized to assist the targeted pat-down search, and as such, the officer can inquire with the individual as to what caused the wand to be triggered. A strip search level 1 is the removal of clothing in stages down to undergarments and visual inspection of the body. This search shall not involve the removal of any more clothing than is necessary. The clothing is then searched as well, and it may also include and extend to the search of the mouth. Strip search level 2 is the removal of all clothing in stages, including undergarments, to permit visual inspection of the body. Any search beyond a frisk search must be authorized by the officer in charge of the prisoner management facility or a patrol supervisor. When the supervisor authorizes a search, they must sign the prisoner detained sheet and document the search in their notebook, including the level of search authorized and the justification for the search. Every search is situational and individually evaluated. Consideration is given as to whether the prisoner has a history of hiding drugs, weapons, or other contraband, or has the officer received information to indicate the presence of these items? What is the nature of the offense committed and the prisoner's behavior, and also the necessity of seizing evidence? Again, the search must be lawfully justified based on the circumstances. Members must also document any search of a person. Members conducting the search detail the search on the prisoner detained sheet and in their respective notebooks. There's also a standalone electronic custody person search log that is accessed through the WRPS internal website. This search log was created and implemented in response to the audit and recommendations. This is an interim solution until the niche custody management system and RMS custody module is implemented. The implementation of niche custody will provide a consolidated platform for the tracking and collection of data regarding the search of persons in one system. This is anticipated to occur in the fall of 2022. And last week, there was a demonstration of the system in the central cell block. This report is based on an examination of the search data from July 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. July 1st was the implementation and creation of the electronic search custody log. I will now hand it over to Amanda to discuss the data, results, and limitations of the data.
Thank you. That's some excellent context leading into my verbal summary of the stats presented in the attachment. As Inspector Braun noted, 100% of searches are documented in both officer notebooks and detain sheets, and we have an internally developed interim solution to capture these electronically. So the Q3 and Q4 2021 stats in this attachment are based on the searches that have been further entered electronically, and that's a format that we need for analysis. Because we know some of the manual records haven't yet made it into our systems, I just want to caution that there are some data limitations. So we do have 1,750 occurrences represented in this report. We just know it's not a full representation of the searches that took place between that 6-month time period. So please view this report as descriptive and not inferential. This attachment demonstrates the types of questions and answers that are possible to explore with the data. Some of the things we are able to explore are the types of searches. And thank you for the definitions. I will highlight that the types of searches were mostly intake searches. So those were more than a frisk, which is the minimum, but less comprehensive than the level 1 and level 2 strip searches. When more than one type of search was conducted as part of an occurrence, for methodology purposes, we did count the most comprehensive type of search. So that's what made it into the graph that you see in the attachment. We can also explore the authorization of searches. We can check that in accordance with procedure, any search beyond a frisk was authorized by the officer in charge, and that the justifications were in line with procedure. So this was the case for all 1,750 records. We can also explore use of force. Use of force was applied less than 1% of the time. Use of force can be applied during the course of the search of person or in the course of seizing an item. Procedure prescribes that using the minimum of force necessary if necessary. Mostly during intake searches, there was use of force applied for safety or procedural reasons, but still this was only 9 times out of the 18 out of the 1,750. There was some use of force applied during level 2 strip searches, mostly justified for the drug justification, and that was 6 times out of the 18 out of the 1,750. We can also explore the results of the searches of persons. And most of the time, there was nothing found. However, drugs were the most common item seized and most often found by conducting level 2 searches. We can also explore demographics of individuals searched. For example, repeated contacts. 11% underwent more than one search over the 6-month time period as a result of more than one arrest over the 6-month time period. We can also explore search locations, and as would be expected, most searches of persons did occur at Central Division. We can also explore perceived race and gender. So this is an officer entry, and the categories are in line with the other race-based data we collect. We can also cross-tabulate that perceived race and gender. Now, because I've already set up these statistics to be descriptive, I would caution against applying any population rates against those stats at this time because of the incomplete data set, but there is future potential. We've also been able to explore young persons counts. So that would be any individual older than 12 or younger than 18 that underwent a search of person over that 6-month time frame. That was the case for 42 individuals, and these were intake searches. As Inspector Bond already described, this interim solution is allowing us to explore some electronic analyses, but there are some solutions in place to ensure that the data set becomes more robust and leading up to the niche custody module. I'll return it to Inspector Bond for any other comments.
Thank you, Amanda. I also just wanted to highlight that, as Amanda mentioned as well, we've put measures in place to limit data inconsistencies. And this includes a daily review by cell block supervisors and a reporting of the daily statistics up through the chain of command until niche custody is implemented. So I'll just, if there's any questions or further clarification.
Thank you very much for a very fulsome report, and we have it in our package. Colleagues, are there any questions of clarification or comments at this time? Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chair Redmond, and maybe I missed this. I'm trying to read through this. 1,700 recorded here. Is it 40% that were handwritten that are not included or are in the process of being included? Or am I misreading the report?
Who would like to respond, Amanda or Brenna?
I'm going to turn that to Amanda if Amanda's okay with that.
Okay.
Sure. We can currently cross-check our niche systems with some of our detained sheets and occurrence numbers. So the 40% is an estimate of what may still yet be entered electronically. That's why some of these results may be subject to change. It could be that they are in this Q3, Q4 date range, and we can update. But again, this was implemented July 1st. It's still ongoing. So we are continuously working at getting that synchronized.
Okay, and just to follow up, so and as a steady state, once it's fully ramped up, it will all be done electronically, and they're making modifications so that it's done at the front end electronically for data collection and reporting. Is that I think that's what I see there, but just wanted to confirm that.
Who would like to confirm that again?
I will, sorry, Amanda, I will turn it over to Amanda, but yes, there is some repetition currently with the system that's in place. And with that, some of the data gets missed. And we're currently put new systems in place so that data until niche custody is in place, that we're capturing that if anything is currently getting missed. And Amanda, did you have anything else to add?
Other than there will be some duplication until we're fully electronic at that point of niche entry.
Okay, thank you.
Amanda, just a follow up from Ian's question, when will we be fully electronic?
I'm not on the niche custody module team. I believe my manager Marg is going to input.
Okay,
So-
Mark or Chief?
Yeah, so thanks very much. I mean, obviously, that is a process that we're working on. There's actually infrastructure enhancements going on at South Division, which is the secondary prisoner care and control facility, but obviously members do land within that division. Central Division is is actually being streamed into a new building at 200 Frederick Street. And in the new development of that, niche custody will obviously be fully materialized. And so we're in the process through 2022 in fully implementing niche custody across the organization. But again, we're also being fiscally responsible. It would require significant enhancements at the current Central Division, which has seen a couple of updates, but the actual prisoner care control facility was originally constructed in 1954. So there's not a lot of room and opportunities to make significant change there. So when the new division is fully live, you'll see that, but the enhancements are happening right now at South, and it will be rolled out across the organization through 2022, but really focused on the new launch and opening of Central Division.
Thank you very much, Chief. And sorry, Amanda, I just figured that you'd be able to answer that because you're answering everything else. Thank you very much for this update. I see no more questions or comments. So Amanda and Brenna, thank you and your team. And I know that there's lots of them on the call, and Marg as well, for your great work. So thank you very much for that. The next agenda item 12.2 is the overview of youth, mental health, homelessness, and encampment strategies. And Chief, do you want to kick this off?
Thanks so much, Chair Redmond. Very pleased to welcome Staff Superintendent Goodman along with Inspector Beth Houston. And just some oversight and background context. This is part of our larger strategic business plan in partnership with the Police Services Board, and it's related to ongoing objectives within the strategic services plan. I'm very excited to welcome Inspector Beth Houston. Will take the board through a series of engagement and well-being strategies where we find ourselves as a police service intersecting with particular focus on youth engagement, as well as a response to mental health calls for service, homelessness and encampment strategies, all key areas where we find ourselves intersecting, but also areas as we look to the future where we continue to look at diversion and alternative service delivery, as well as maximizing the use of our resources. So welcome, Beth, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Chair Redmond and members of the board. It's nice to see you again, and thanks for the opportunity to be here this morning. So the last time I was here last month, I discussed the community engagement and wellbeing branch and how we've developed our DART teams in our CEU unit. So as we got rolling last year, we were asked to put our minds to developing some strategies which could be used to help guide and inform the work of our WRPS members. The request was for strategies regarding youth and youth engagement, mental health, and with this I'm referring to our external strategy, as well as homelessness and encampments. We ensured our work and writing aligned with our strategic business plan, our values, missions, but also in collaboration with some of our community partners. It's very important to point out that these strategies are a starting place, a blueprint, a direction to go. We are always mindful that we need to be agile and shift directions when called for. And although I had the pleasure of speaking with you this morning, this was a fantastic team effort with input from multiple members of my CEU team. And in particular, I'd like to highlight the work of Sergeant JP McSween and Constable Wes Airy. They were absolutely invaluable to the development of these strategies. So please bear with me. There is a large amount of content contained in these slides. So I'm likely going to read a little more than I would like, simply to ensure I'm not missing key information and for the sake of time, ensuring I am not wandering off topic. Once again, Jill is being very kind to me this morning and helping me with the tech side, so many thanks to her. So next slide, please, Jill. So we're going to begin with our youth strategy. The foundation of this strategy speaks to our mission statement: to deliver effective policing services while embracing collaborative partnerships and community engagement, which strengthens public safety and community well-being. One of the goals as set out in our strategic business plan specifically refers to the need and the importance of collaborating with youth in the development of youth programming. There have been some significant changes over the past couple of years of how we have typically had the opportunities to engage with youth. Things change and they evolve, but what never changes is the importance of our kids and the youth in this community. Some people question the role of police when it comes to interacting with youth, but I think it's important to challenge and reframe that a little bit. We are first and foremost daughters, sons, mothers, fathers, neighbors, coaches, volunteers. And it's because of these roles why we have such a massive vested interest in seeing all children thrive and succeed. We are community members first, who also just happen to be police officers with responsibilities. And I think that's very important to remember in these conversations. Next slide, please, Jill. So here are the goals we have set out as a framework for the youth strategy, and each of these will be comprised of different initiatives. If we look at the evolution and development of youth engagement programs, we will see the creation of a Chiefs Youth Advisory Council as a cornerstone piece of this strategy. Our strategic business plan speaks to the importance of collaboration, and we need to create spaces where the voices of our youth are amplified and valued. We will see the continuation of the Youth in Policing Initiative program, YIPI. We had a very successful launch last summer. The Impactful Cops and Youth program will resume, and we will look to create a teen random act of kindness program because we all know this world could definitely use a little more kindness these days. If we look at the reimagination of the WRPS role within our regional schools, obviously over the last several years, there have been some significant changes. We are committed to continuing with respectful conversations with the goal of developing a path forward with our educational partners. We still continue to provide the violence risk assessments as per the school board police protocol, and we are continuing with engagement opportunities with some of our education partners. We want to be involved with kids, to listen to them, learn from them, and have our work guided by their ideas and experiences. We will see youth diversion modernized. We continue to facilitate with the Youth Weapons Diversion Program in collaboration with the John Howard Society. We will be creating standardized curriculum to be used during these sessions and presentations with the youth and their families, and also creating diversion completion reports for tracking purposes for both ourselves and John Howard Society. There does need to be a tracking system created and monitored, and I think as we've moved away from having a dedicated youth sergeant, we might have lost track of some of our youth diversion pieces. So we do need to create systems to monitor these more carefully. We believe there are some areas of technology which could also assist us with some of this work, a pre-charge diversion app for use similar to the one which was rolled out for adults, an electronic notification system developed in collaboration with youth probation and parole. Of course, we will continue our support for community youth-focused initiatives. We continue to be a voting member on the Children and Youth Planning Table of Waterloo Region, and we value the important work being done by that collaborative. We are actively seeking opportunities to participate and engage with the kids in our region. Next slide, please, Jill. So now we're going to move to speak about the mental health strategy. There has been a great deal of conversation regarding policing and mental health response. Having appropriate responses has become an important focal point. With this mental health strategy, we think it's an exciting opportunity to continue to engage with the impressive mental health professionals in our community and create a platform to begin examining other opportunities and change, always with the ultimate goal of successful outcomes for members of our community. Next slide, please. So we've broken the strategy into short, medium, and long-term goals because we realize just how much work and change is contained within. So starting with short-term goals. You've certainly heard previously about our plans for our crisis call diversion program in our communication center. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now as we're waiting to hear about the results of a provincial grant, which would help us fund this initiative. In terms of tracking the mental health data, I think that we only really receive a portion of the picture of how often our calls for service intersect with mental health. It would not be unusual for us to deal with call for service, and we'll use a theft as an example, but then realize there is a mental health component related to that call, which may have factored in. That information likely gets captured in the written narrative portion of the report, but in times where we're actually just trying to pull data and get a clear picture of how prevalent our work intersects with mental health, I think that we're missing some because of how we categorize our call types. It's important to get a more accurate understanding and accurate data of what we're encountering. We are committed to providing our members with enhanced mental health training and education. Our CEU team is working with our friends and partners at Impact to provide this enhanced training during in-service training, which is happening the first half of this year. Impact members will also be joining daily briefings regularly to provide that direct connection for frontline patrol for education and learning purposes. Health IM is a risk analysis form which essentially informs the hospital crisis team in advance of an admission. It's designed to speed up and expedite the process and to be used as a referral tool. We have some work to do in regards to completion rate on our end internally, and we need some further education for our members so that they understand its importance and why it's a helpful tool. Next slide, please. Moving on to medium-term goals. We have a whole grocery list of community partners who we already routinely collaborate with in our daily work, but we have an incredible community and we know there are more. Our aim is to help connect people and provide people we come into contact with the most fulsome and appropriate support as possible. We are keenly aware that sometimes it is better suited not to be us. What we routinely ask is who else can help, and that is who we want to be collaborating with for the best possible outcomes. We will champion for amendments to the Ontario Mental Health Act with the intention of authorizing professional clinicians and other mental health professionals apprehension authorities. This will improve the efficacy of mental health apprehensions. It will also improve the efficiency and the dignity behind apprehensions by enabling a circle of care to apprehend as soon as reasonable grounds are determined. As well, this could at times alleviate the need for a police response, and at hospital will help alleviate issues of stigma. We have a need to review and improve efficiencies regarding the intake of mental health forms because, believe it or not, many times they still get faxed to us. This just creates opportunities for these important documents to get lost and fall through the cracks. So we will create a modern and secure system for the intake and management of mental health forms. We have not done a deep dive to see what else is out there in terms of the mental health strategies being utilized by other police agencies on a provincial, national, and global stage. I believe that needs to happen in order to be well informed and consider perspectives and ideas we might not have otherwise. Sometimes we don't always have to reinvent the wheel, and there are other police services who have faced significant changes and challenges within their communities. There is much we can learn from them. We already have some excellent working relationships with partners who are doing incredible and innovative work around mental health and addiction. Sanguine Health, CTS, the Working Center, the Integrated Drug Strategy. We need to continue to support these partnerships and educate our members by participating in conferences and workshops informing best practices around decriminalization of drugs and safe supply. We need to study crime trends, pre and post implementation of new addiction services, and such as safe supply. We need education and data to make informed decisions. Next slide. And then moving on to long-term goals. It would be very easy for me to come on here and speak on behalf of WRPS about what we want to do, how we're going to do it, and what we've decided as an approach to mental health response. But honestly, that would be exclusionary of a lot of conversation happening in the community about removing police from the equation. I do not pretend for one moment to know what the answer to that is. However, I know we are committed to being a part of that conversation and play a role in helping determine what that might look like. This would include developing a guiding council to help inform and direct that work. There are some incredible academic minds out there working on mental health research. We will be looking to identify these institutions who are able to partner with us to conduct research on mental health best practices as they intersect specifically with policing and mental health service delivery. And we also want to make sure our doors remain open to our partners and that the benefits of these relationships are reciprocal. As a police agency, we need to be able to support our partnering agencies with information and data, which might also support their proposals for mental health funding of their agencies. Next slide, please. Moving on to our last strategy, homelessness and encampments. I wish I could come to you today and tell you that we have figured out the magic wand solution as to how to fix and address this massive societal issue, but that is not reality. Homelessness includes a variety of circumstances, such as living on the streets or places not meant for habitation, staying in our shelter system, hidden homelessness, and staying in precarious or inadequate housing. The root causes of this issue also widely vary from person to person. There are numerous community partners engaged with the homeless population, along with WRPS within our region. We seek innovation in this area through multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral partnerships, such as the shelter care system, mental health experts, medical care, street outreach, as well as cultural supports, employment services, food banks, coalitions, and the government. This strategy promotes the engagement of all community partners and stakeholders. It's intended to act as a framework to support operational deployment, education and training initiatives, organizational partnerships, and a commitment to our community members. Again, we continue to circle back to the all-important question, who else can help? Next slide, please. So again, we split the goals included in this strategy into short, medium, and long-term goals. So for short term, we're developing an encampment protocol. This is well underway, but it includes tasks such as creating a reporting protocol for encampment locations for engagement by our CEU unit and community partners, developing a resource deployment flowchart, trying to better define the policing role when dealing with encampments based on property ownership type, and developing an upstream approach for frontline patrol to use to connect with appropriate community partners. We are working on developing a resource guide for frontline patrol, which includes resources outlining the proper application of legislation, enhanced training on duties and legislative authorities for arrest and charge appropriate to property ownership. And we're having CEU members riding with new officers to develop community engagement awareness and knowledge of all of our community partners. We will continue to build on engagement opportunities with our current regional and geographical subcommittee partnerships on housing strategies. We will continue our role on the Regional Encampment Bylaw Response Protocol Committee and continue to work and engage with our shelter care partners. Most importantly, we will continue to connect and support with individuals experiencing homelessness through referral processes to the appropriate support agencies. Next slide, please. In terms of medium-term goals, so we continue our work with our judicial partners to develop and adopt suggested terms of release to include connections with community partner agencies related to root causes when applicable. We need to ensure our justice partners have access to a fulsome picture of situations and circumstances when determining the best way to proceed with some situations. We've already had several very successful collaborations with our judicial partners to ensure that the people were being provided with the most appropriate resources through court imposed terms. We will champion interagency co-training on assessments and referrals to appropriate supports. And we need to develop a public awareness campaign and communication strategy focusing on the importance of a collaborative approach to homelessness and encampments using social media and microsites. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And lastly, we are almost there. So the long-term goals for this strategy. We'll be working towards using direct partnerships for a team response to the homeless and encampments. This would involve us, healthcare and mental health services, local bylaw for a team-based approach and an active response to encampments. Let's have all of the players who can be of value out and ready to assist. This includes developing a protocol to bring in and deploy other agencies who can assist when encampments are discovered. We will also be working towards championing, you know what I'm trying to say, the development of a regional coordinated access system for people experiencing homelessness where they can navigate referrals to a centralized intake. We need to create a system where people can access the help and support they require without sending them to multiple different agencies on their own. So that is a very fast overview and high-level overview of some of the work being done. Again, these are each very fluid documents, which are flexible and allow us the ability to adapt to what's in front of us. There is some very exciting and a lot of work ahead of us. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Thank you.
So Beth, I just on behalf of the board want to tell you, you did a great job. Championing is never an easy word to say. And you were on fast forward. Boy, a lot of information there. Any questions or comments from the board? Sandy, go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. One thing that struck me, and I was sort of thinking as you were talking that, okay, one size doesn't fit all, so be careful about trying to make one size doesn't fit all. And then I paid a little more attention and realized that embedded in every one of those slides are relationships with support agencies. I think that's really key to the success here and to, you know, being able to adequately deal with all the different communities throughout the region. So thank you, well done.
Thank you, Sandy. Ian, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Redmond, and thank you, Beth, for the report. I do appreciate the in each of those areas, the short, medium, and long-term goals. Really, I think it may be a question for the chief because it speaks to the transformation and reform agenda that both the chief has and the service has and the board has. the demands on policing, and we talk about this just about every meeting: guns, gangs, violent crime, human trafficking, mental health, social driven issues that are addressed in this report. There's always a sense of the need for speed in terms of making those reforms and that transformation. And then we run into, as Mayor Shantz just talked about, the need that the police can't do it alone, and it requires partners. So I guess the question I have is, that need for that transformation and reformation and speeding that along against the effective implementation and the practical implementation. How do we kind of move, keep on the road to that change when it's so complicated and there's so many partners involved?
Thanks very much. I was hoping that the chime in the background would end. My apologies. Excellent question. And first, just want to recognize Inspector Houston and her team for the amazing leadership. At the heart of what we do in policing is at the ground level, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're one of the few agencies that operates around the clock. And we recognize that other agencies are working towards that, are looking at expansion and changing. And I think, locally and regionally across the region, and to highlight Mayor Shantz's comments, is that, you have to recognize that we have urban centers and rural centers, and the level of service delivery has to be different. The level of partnerships may be different. But, I think when we look at the connectivity tables, for example, where we're looking at, acute care intervention and some of the challenges, that's just one example of where I think we are actually making change and progress, is where we're able to bring acute care intervention issues, which traditionally may have been in the policing realm, but now we're actually bringing it to the right set of stakeholders for a wraparound community approach. Clearly, what you've seen in these pieces is that the police service does not want to be the lead agency in the majority of these items. In fact, we want to be a supporting role, or we want to be a convener, or, for example, from a communication perspective, we operate a communication center on behalf of the region, and it makes complete sense, for calls to come in and we can divert. And so, for example, the mental health response and crisis call diversion is one of those areas where we understand the call may come in, but we may do that. Included in that is the alternative service delivery we're working with the regional Waterloo on, which may include, community paramedicine and other approaches where we're simply moving and streaming into the right piece. So I think that a lot of amazing work is ongoing and has been ongoing. But I think one of the challenges we live in is a world of instantaneous. And so we expect this change to happen overnight, and it's not that easy. We're working through different systems. We're working through memorandums of understanding. Some of it is funding based. For example, the mental health piece, as the board is aware, I'm hoping to receive funding from the Ministry of Solicitor General to launch that pilot project and those types of things. So I think at all the different pieces, and quite frankly, I think one of our, what I'm really excited about is the launch of the Wellbeing Waterloo Region Plan, which brings together so much of that upstream work and change around well-being and wellness and focusing on the social determinants of health. And I know that that's a work in progress, but I'm really excited and equally excited to see, for example, on the crime side, the evolution of the Community Justice Center and what the Community Justice Initiative group does with the Community Justice Center around advancing some of those pieces. So I think, Mr. McLean, we're on the right track. We'll continue to keep the board apprised. We have good data matrix to measure our success, call reduction, call diversion. The one example I'll speak to is even around diversion. We're working very hard around youth diversion with the John Howard Society, even the Family Violence Project with, Horizon and Women Crisis Services of Waterloo Region. The work that we're doing around sexual assaults and with the Sexual Assault Center, as well as the Sexual Assault Treatment Center, is actually driving policy changes, driving policing changes. And Deputy Hilton and Inspector Deb McBride right now are leading ongoing discussions with Family and Children's Services around our current memorandum of understanding. How do we intersect? How do we interact? How do we do business differently? So I think one of the challenges is there's so much work happening is that, we're pulled in many different directions, but I think that, again, I'm immensely proud of where we're heading. The strategic direction is there. We hope to see the fruition and the outcomes of this to be better around our community. Like anything, I think that there's some peaks, and I also think, the last 2 years have been an anomaly, living in a pandemic world where our ability to build relations and continue relations has been is different. I mean, we all look at the way we're meeting right now, but I think, as we look to the future, we look to April and beyond, I think we're seeing some sense of, in many ways, back to the basics of advancing some of these strategies. So very pleased with the work that's happening. This is a major accomplishment for the board. It's part of your strategic direction, and I'm very excited. Shirley, John, and Beth have really delivered hard on this issue with the amazing team. There's a whole cast of characters doing an amazing work, and they deserve the celebration and of the outcomes of today. We just have the privilege to actually present them.
So I really think this is a very impressive update and report, and I would have to tell you that the respect and the honoring of relationships, I think, is really the bedrock of how we go forward. I was really pleased to hear about the advocacy work and pressing the provincial government to change some legislation that will free us up to change the model, because there are certain constraints right now on how we do that. And Ian, I just really love the Africans saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with the group. I appreciate your putting a highlight on everybody wants this to already have happened, but I do believe that the work that's going on now is both impressive and productive. So I appreciated your question. Sandy.
Thanks again. Just lest we think that this is all brand new, and not to take away from the work. I think this is an absolutely fabulous initiative and sort of putting some structure around it. But I can speak from experience talking to our social agencies in the township here, that the collaboration between the police and our social agencies is fabulous, and I have nothing but good reports from them. We've had some difficult mental health issues and some homelessness issues recently that have been well taken care of by our police services. And so thank you to the service for the work that you are doing, and thank you for the forward looking on how you can make it better.
Thank you very much for those comments. I see no further comments, so I will assume we have updates. And I personally love the short, medium, and long term. That's kind of the way I approach very large projects. So really spoke to me for the logic and the planning. So Inspector Houston, thank you on behalf of the board and the community and all of the partners in your team. Really exciting stuff. I see no further hands. The next item is 12.3, monthly Chief of Police report. It's verbal. Over to you, Chief Larkin.
Thanks so much, Chair Redmond, and on behalf of Deputy Hilton and Deputy Crowell, certainly a privilege to provide an update today and looking at the past month and looking ahead of all the different pieces. We'd like to start by actually recognizing International Women's Day, which we officially celebrated yesterday as a police service with the globe. But I think it's an opportunity at this Police Services Board to recognize the amazing members of the Police Services Board, led by yourself and Dr. Schnarr and all of the amazing community leaders as we advance, gender equality and gender balance across our organization. And of course, today you've seen a glimpse of the amazing, strong women leaders we have. Inspector Brenna Bond presenting on searches, as well as Miss Margaret Glode, Inspector Houston, Miss Amanda Franceschini, and of course, at every board meeting, you get to see our amazing and talented Deputy Chief Shirley Hilton, along with many others. And so I think it's a great opportunity to celebrate and highlight the work that is ongoing internally. We continue to have a tremendous focus around advancement and accelerating the strong women leadership in our organization. And that also includes ongoing recruiting initiatives, particularly on the uniform side. And so I'm very proud to work with such amazing a strong woman in our organization and also work with the Police Services Board. So happy belated International Women's Day, but it's an opportune time to say thank you. And thank you, Chair Redmond, for your leadership over the years of the organizing the breakfast. And I hopefully in 2023, you'll get to do it in person, which leads me to the next piece that I've been updating regularly is around our Emergency Operations Center and all things pandemic related. Speaking of strong leadership, Inspector Mancuso continues to lead our Emergency Operations Center. And as the board is aware, we're working towards deconstructing our Emergency Operations Center as we look at provincial regulations and changes to the Reopening Act of Ontario. Our goal is towards April 3rd to deconstruct and go back to normalized operations. We continue to see some fluctuations from day to day of members being off duty. Yesterday, as of 6 p.m., 33 members off duty, 186 total positive cases, no change over the last 24 hours, 27 on-duty positive cases, again, no change over the last number of weeks. We currently have 19 members who are in some form of isolation, 14 self-isolating and 21 self-monitoring. And that fluctuates day to day. We're ranging from anywhere from 20 off-duty to the 35 off-duty range. It varies based on shift scheduling. But again, we're certainly aligned. We have returned and integrated our members into the workplace. We continue to review our RAS program, our rapid antigen testing program. We'll continue to monitor that in the coming weeks, particularly as we look to March break and members of our service who may be vacationing or congregating, et cetera. We'll see the overall impact. But again, we remain on track, and the board can expect in April a final wrap up in relation to all things pandemic, including our financial implications as we roll through. I also want to highlight that it is the fraud prevention month. And, one of the concerns that we've been seeing, particularly over the last 30 days or so, is a significant local financial scheme, which is targeting seniors. We've had a series of what they're calling in the Public Information Office as grandparent schemes, where their seniors are targeted. And just over the last, month or so, just over 20 individuals that have been impacted by this with more than $100,000 of financial loss. And I think as, when we look to our older adults, that's a significant amount of money. And so we continue to promote fraud prevention and financial crime. And a shout out to our amazing financial crime investigators as the complexity has changed. It's very much online, very much cybercrime based, and we now add cryptocurrency and other processes through that. So want to continue to highlight that. The other piece I just want to speak to somewhat is around youth crime. There has been some public attention around youth crime. And, it's important, I think, to look at, again, some different comparators. And so there may be a community perception that youth crime has significantly increased in 2022. And in many ways, it's really not the case. We remain somewhat steady, although some of the complexities and some of the style of youth crime has changed, and I'll highlight that. But for example, in 2021, the number of youth charged in January was 69. In 2022, it's 70. And so again, from an evidence-based perspective, relatively on track. And similarly, in 2021, in February, we had 83 versus 60 charged this month. And so, and even the number of charges that are laid, last year in the first 2 months, 279 total charges. That includes criminal and provincial offenses. This year, 239. So again, we actually see a slight decrease. Number of charges diverted. Inspector Deb McBride, as the board is aware, continues to work very closely with John Howard Society. We believe one of the best options is around diversion, around actually addressing youth crime in a different perspective. And last year in the first 2 months, we had 66 young people that were diverted. This year, we're currently sitting at 50. And that speaks to a little bit of the complexities of some of the different focuses. There's a couple of pieces that I also want to highlight. Again, there remains much attention around response to school-based violence, et cetera. We continue to have an excellent working relationship with all school boards, the public, the Catholic, private schools, the Francophone school, as well as our various private schools, including MAC. And so to date, we've had 23 calls towards at high school, which are related to violence. And I think that there's been a significant amount of public attention, including from the police service, raising awareness. And it really stems actually in the fall of 2020, when students did return to the classroom. We saw a significant increase, and in much of it, our investigative services area, our intelligence services led by Superintendent Fenton and team, really equates this in many ways to sort of youth gang and or traditional turf disputes, where one group of students would engage in violence with another group from a different school. There'd be disturbances on school property and off school property. And one of the challenges, though, is the disturbing pieces is around weapons being involved, and whether that's replica firearms or others such as brass knuckles, chains, and most recently axes and et cetera. And so those are always concerning. We're also seeing a series of school-based violence where we're seeing online threats, which are anonymous in nature, which do prompt a police response in partnership with the school board framework. Also seeing recently students using social media as an intimidation, as a bullying piece, threatening harm, and of course, more recently, even messages written in washroom stalls, washroom mirrors around potential harm. And all of these do bring rise to occasion. And of course, most recently, the board will be aware of arrest of a young person in possession of a replica firearm in the city of Kitchener. The young person was arrested. A Glock-style BB gun was seized, and it was in relation to a potential turf war and settlement style approach. And so, these are concerning, but we're working with our partners, but want to bring a sense of calm. When you look at from year to year, we're on track. There's no major pattern changes other than what we're seeing is people returning to school, some of the various challenges. Of course, though, most recently, I'd be remiss if I haven't highlighted in the last 2 weeks, very rare for us to use judicial authority, but in the last 2 weeks under the Police Services Act, I've authorized the release via judicial order of young person's photos, one related to a homicide. We have a 17-year-old charged in relation to a homicide in Cambridge. In that case, a firearm was used. We did release in the interest of public safety, and most recently a 15-year-old wanted for a variety of alleged person-on-person robberies, which were random and not targeted. And so there was a public safety piece. That speaks to the level of potential violence in our community, which is always concerning, which really relates back to the work that Inspector Houston and team is doing around youth engagement and how do we actually become more proactive than reactive and work with the variety of our members. And so wanted to bring some attention to that. Of course, as the public is, or the board is well aware, and the community is that there has been an element of ongoing protest demonstrations and occupations, both locally, provincially, and nationally. I do want to take an opportunity to recognize the team from across WRPS that responded to assist externally. And I want to thank and recognize Superintendent Tom Bursey and Inspector Jamie Sheridan for their leadership. We did have members, obviously, from our public safety team in the city of Windsor supporting initiatives, the city of Toronto. Our major event team was in the city of Ottawa, as well as members of our investigative services that were doing frontline functions in the city of Ottawa. And again, a tremendous amount of work and recognizing and taking an opportunity to also thank our president of our police association, Mr. Mark Eagers, for working with us on very short notice, moving people across the province while ensuring the ongoing level of policing across the region. Of course, the month of March is also a busy day in relation to a celebration, St. Patrick's Day on March 17th, which is a global celebration. I think we can all recognize that after 2 years of celebrating virtually and celebrating in our homes, that many individuals with the reopening of pubs and bars and other institutions that we likely will see people celebrating and is sort of the nexus to the end of post-secondary school, as well as heading into exams, as well as sort of spring is coming. And so I do want to again assure the board that we have a significant operational plan in place to ensure the safety of all citizens across the region for St. Patrick's Day. That is being led by our Operational Support Division, Superintendent Tom Bursey, the architect of all of our operational plans, working with, in particular, the City of Waterloo, our post-secondary institutions, regional paramedics, as well as bylaw and fire. An operational team is in place, adequate and effective staffing is in place. And I do want to take a moment to recognize over the last 2 years that our students and our student unions have been exemplary citizens. They have heeded our call to celebrate responsibly in a global pandemic. And I think as we look at, as we find our way coming out of a global pandemic, the threat is still real. People are still contracting and contacting COVID-19. And so we hopefully once again recognize that everybody will celebrate responsibly, appropriately, but again, a full plan is in place. Again, we're very confident in that. And finally, I just want to end on recognizing the work of our South Division, our DART, and our community engagement members. Most recently on February 25th, in the earlier morning hours, just before 11 a.m., did respond to a significant incident in the city of Cambridge on Water Street at Simcoe, where 4 WRPS members were injured, 2 of them being stabbed, a third having their uniform slashed, and a 4th being bitten. This was a significant incident. And again, it is a stark reminder of the realities of policing, the unpredictability of policing, and the unpredictability of the society that we provide service to. But the response was nothing short than courageous, brave, and heroic. And those members, their training and the investment in the training that the board provides through our operational budget, the amazing work of our training branch, the mid-leadership and the team that does the work, and the equipment we have, including a tourniquet which was used, is short of nothing. And of course, this matter is before the courts, but as I can tell the board is that myself and the deputies had the privilege to meet with many of the members involved in this incident, to meet with their families, and their sense of duty, their sense of self of duty to the community was very evident. One of the members in an external hospital, humorously, but with some seriousness, advising that he'd be back to work the next day. We did remind them that, to look after themselves, but the significant injuries, but I'm pleased to also say both officers are recovering and on the road to recovery from their physical injuries. Significant wellness support and is appropriately been put in place. But, I know that myself and Deputy Hilton and Deputy Crowell and our leadership team are extremely proud. That's the caliber and the level of people that every single day serve our region. So again, I want to thank the board. It was a short turnaround from February to March. We know the board agenda in April will be much more lengthy. But again, thank you for your continued support and leadership to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. I would just like to reflect on the comments that you've made. Every month, board members of the Police Service Board get to see the heroism and the variety of challenges that Waterloo Regional Police serve 24/7. I'm really happy that you highlighted it, and thank you for bringing us up to date with those officers that were injured specifically in that incident in Cambridge. I just also wanted, on behalf of the board, I know Superintendent Bursey is in the audience, and just to give a shout out and thank him and the other members of Waterloo Regional Police Service that were embedded and provided strategic strength during the rallies that happened in Ottawa and the shutting down of the border, and say that this police board was kept apprised of all the deployment that was happening through the chief giving us regular updates. And on behalf of the board, we were incredibly proud of the bench strength that we were able to provide both in Ottawa, in Windsor, and in Toronto. That balance between people's right to dissent, but to keep communities safe and keep order is always a fine balance. And we were well served as a region that we sent you as representatives to those other areas. So I thank you. We are in your debt, as is the broader community. Is there any new business? Seeing none, future agenda items. Information items. So once we're adjourned, let members of the media know that they can continue, I believe, on this logged in on this Zoom call, and they will be able to ask the chief any questions. And having said that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Carl, seconded by Karen. Please indicate your support by raising your hand. It's funny how that one's always unanimous, isn't it? Thank you all for a very productive morning. Again, the media can stay on, and I believe Sherry Greeno will come on to field